And now we're going to have a short conversation with Keegan English. He is our Chief Development Officer. He's always on the market talking to cultivators, other extractors, to retailers, and I think he has some really good insights for you guys about what we're seeing in the market. When you're getting ready to harvest, or you have some product to extract, or you're considering selling it, and I think you're seeing a lot of stuff out there in the market that I think is pretty important for people to keep in mind, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So, as we get into this harvest season, there's a lot of new farmers this year, constantly looking kind of ahead of what to do with their biomass now that they have it. First and foremost, it's about whether or not you want to sell your biomass, or you want to actually turn it into extraction and try selling your crude oil or turning it into a finalized product. So I recommend if you're a smaller farm, you're not going to get the same results that a large farm will get from selling their biomass. So your best bet and the way that you can make the most return on your investment is to actually turn it into finalized product, whether that's building your brand, white labeling it for someone else, or just selling it locally at your local stores. So when you start searching for a processor, you want to ask them if they have the ability to take your biomass and turn it all the way through to either a tincture, vapes, gummies, or whatever other crazy concoctions they're coming up with nowadays.
Yeah. So I think that's important to keep in mind, because as a cultivator, and maybe you've been farming for, your family has been farming for generations, and so farming, and that's what you want to do. You want to farm hemp because that's the new thing. There's a great potential for money, but then there are a lot of other flavors of how you can profit, not just farming and then selling that plant to someone, because like you mentioned, you can either have somebody process it and get it back and maybe sell that to somebody else, or you can have somebody extract it for you and bottle it, and you can sell it at your local community, or you can sell that to somebody else. Like there's just so many different ways. Just to hope that people can consider that you don't want to limit yourself to just planting, harvesting, and saying, here you go. That's
Absolutely.
it. Like that, if you want to do that, that's great, but there are a lot of other options to consider.
Oh yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of these small brands from small farms. I mean, you're talking about half an acre or less, who are turning it into these finalized products, coming out with maybe just 2 strengths of tinctures, and they're building really reputable brands just because that's what the local community wants. They want a brand, they want a farm that's local, that they can say, hey, this was grown right down the street from me, and these customers come back, and it's a way for you to grow just past that farming aspect of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then if you're thinking about, you're a cultivator and you say, okay, I want to look at some extractors, right? And so we have an extraction company, and so these are the things that I think are just good to keep in mind when looking for an extractor. What do you suggest?
So things when you're looking for an extractor, one, the big debate is always ethanol versus CO2. Just a quick, dumbed down version of the difference. They can both produce a very high quality product if done right, but on the flip side of that, they can both produce a very low quality product if done wrong. So with CO2, it's basically taking every part of the plant, ripping it apart, and then putting it back together. However, if they don't get their pressures right and things like that, they can just, it's called basically smash it out, and you get a very low quality product from CO2. The same thing with ethanol, right? So ethanol, if you winterize it, which preserves a lot of the plant, if you go through the right proper steps of filtration and do an active carbon filter and things like that, the product comes out very pure. You couldn't tell the difference between that and CO2 extracted. However, to avoid some taxes, a lot of ethanol extractors are using ethanol cut with heptane or butane, which to me is just not the healthiest way to go about it. So, it's up to you. Do your research on ethanol versus CO2, and always ask an extractor what they're planning on doing with it. Also, if they're winterizing it, and a couple of things to look for is how many pounds per day can they do. If you want high quality, that tends to be a smaller facility, a small batch facility, just like with beer. If you want to go for big numbers, quantity over quality, that could be something. If you have 50 acres, maybe you just want a processor that can do 2,000 pounds a day.
Yeah, and also that timeline, you want to know, you want to decide when you want to get it back.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we've heard horror stories where people from last year, they delivered their biomass to an extractor, and to this day they still don't have either their money or their crude back, or they don't have anything.
Yeah, they just were left out to dry, and some people lost their farms this season because their money was tied up, still waiting for a processor to get their product back to them.
Yeah. So I think expectations are really big, especially at the beginning when you're engaging with somebody. Just make sure that whether there's an agreement. I mean, you should always have an agreement. Just say that. Just making sure that you understand when you're getting paid, when you're getting your plant back if that's an issue, or just how you're going to get out of it if there's an issue on either side of the agreement. So anything else that a cultivator should think about when choosing an extractor?
I would definitely say read the contracts, absolutely. There's a lot of like splits going on, so that way if a farmer doesn't have enough upfront money to pay for the processing, the processor does a split for the crude. Now, what a lot of farmers don't understand, and a lot of processors like to slip underneath the radar, is that we'll do a split of, we'll extract it for you and we'll take 30% of the sale price, but they also take out their fees for the extraction. So all of a sudden, they write you a check, and that check's a lot smaller than what you were expecting. So just make sure you're reading the contracts. You ask for the contracts up front. You try to get some references. References never hurt anyone, and if they're a reputable facility, they should be willing to give you some of those.
So if you want to get in touch with Keegan to get some more information about how we can process your biomass, take a look at the link in the video.
Somewhere.
It's like floating.
Maybe over there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or down there or up here.
But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. We're pretty much an open book here. We're just here to educate you guys and hope that you guys have a great harvest this season. And we look forward to meeting you, working with you, whatever we can make happen.